Welcome back to Last Minute Review. This is AP US History Unit 2, period 1607 to 1754. In the previous unit, we went over Spanish, French, and English colonization. It is the English colonies that go on to form the United States of America, so we'll be focusing on those. Let's go over them really quick. First, we have Jamestown, settled by the Virginia Company, a joint stock company that financed settling in America. It relied on growing cash crops, mainly tobacco, and had many conflicts with Native Americans. The colony relied on indentured servitude and slavery. Next, we have Plymouth, settled by the Pilgrims, separatists. Then we have Massachusetts Bay. The Massachusetts Bay colony was settled by Puritans, who had strict religious interpretations and came to America for religious freedom. As we went over in the last video, the one guy they exiled, Roger Williams, actually went on to create his own colony, Rhode Island, which was more religiously tolerant and had separation of church and state. The Puritans also founded Connecticut. Some things that aren't mentioned in AP US history as much are New Amsterdam, which was founded by the Dutch, and Pennsylvania, which was founded by the Quakers. Here's what you need to know about the Puritans. They believed in predestination, that everybody was either destined to salvation or damnation, and that they couldn't change it. Puritan beliefs strongly influenced American values. They emphasized education, had a democratic church structure, and were capitalists, as they believed that having wealth was a sign of salvation. The event that marked the beginning of significant changes in colonial America was Bacon's Rebellion in 1676. By Nathaniel Bacon, it was a protest against indentured servitude and slavery against the planter aristocracy government in Virginia. The rebellion was ultimately stopped by the governor of Virginia at the time, Governor Berkeley, and his loyalist forces after the sudden death of Nathaniel. The rebellion and the subsequent Stono Uprising led to a harsher crackdown on slaves and indentured servants in colonial America, leading to the Negro Act of 1740, which heavily limited slaves' rights to education and assembly. It also led to the New York Slave Conspiracy of 1740, where fires in New York City were blamed on slaves and poor white residents. Although Bacon's rebellion failed, it signified the American spirit of rebelling and challenging royal authority, and can be described as a mini-American Revolution. This period was a time of great change in the colonies. It was made up of a completely new generation, one that had never been in Europe, and therefore had little loyalty or ties to the king. Public higher education was becoming more commonplace, with Yale and Harvard. Salutary neglect also added on to the colonial feeling of independence at this time. Britain had passed navigation acts, but they didn't enforce them strictly in an attempt to keep the colonists happy and loyal. More focused on dealing with European affairs in this time period as well. Although limited to property-holding white men, legislation and self-government in the colonies was advancing as well, with growing freedom of press. New, very significant ideology developed during this time period as well, known as the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening was a religious movement led by very passionate preachers that would literally preach in the fields because they were kicked out of Puritan churches. They promoted personal Christian evangelism and challenged authority, promoted diversity of thought, and encouraged colonial unity. All these changes in colonial America, the idea of rebelling against and challenging royal authority, the taste of freedom from mercantilism, and growth of self-government and free speech set the stage for the American Revolution. Alright, that's the end of Unit 2. Thank you for watching. Subscribe so I keep making more of these.